Hey guys, and welcome to another brand new video. In this video, we actually have some very interesting news to go and cover over here, where apparently we are now seeing folks saying that this is probably the worst time to go and buy a PlayStation 5. Now, as you guys probably know from me, I'm a big component of trying to do restocks and trying to get like the best deals and best prices and like obviously, so people can actually go and buy and get their consoles, especially throughout these past 2 years. But for some odd reason now, we're kind of seeing some big pushback now that it's becoming somewhat more regularly available. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's still like you could walk into every single store instantly, like right this second, and know there's a console, but it's been getting a little bit more, a big flush of stock right before the holidays, right before Black Friday and Cyber Monday. But even with all of that, and even with all these really good news and good games and God of War Ragnarok seemingly being awesome, we do actually have some folks saying that the PlayStation 5 is just not worth buying. It's not a good console, and it's just, you shouldn't buy it. Like, you really just shouldn't go and buy it. So I'm going to give you guys my thoughts and comments on this one, because every now and then we get these editorials that are a little bit more on the spicy side. And of course, I always love seeing people going against the grain, because, well, it's just more fun to talk about that than everyone always agree. And I'm sure you guys are probably agree on that. And as well, if you guys are brand new, make sure you guys are subscribed with the notifications on. And for the $500 giveaway going on, either or, just have to be subscribed to enter. We also have the Twitter and Twitch down below for those bonus entries. And of course, Target links if you guys want to check and see if they have PlayStations or Amazon links too. For their signups, there should be a drop going tomorrow, so use those links down below. But we have a very intriguing article over here from Risewood talking about how there's never been a worse time to go and buy a PlayStation 5, calling it the Price Station 5, which I'll have to see if we agree or disagree over here on our nice little live reaction for this. So as much as I've enjoyed the PS5 since its 2020 launch, I've loved mine too, although I will go and say that there has been a few times where I just don't touch it for a few months, you know, say after Ratchet & Clank was done, nothing was there, Returnal's done, nothing's there, and probably after God of War, maybe a little bit of Call of Duty 2, whenever I get burnt out with that, I'll probably be a little bit more laid back on my PS5, but still been enjoying it, still will like it. It's hard to deny that the PS5 has blazed a trail throughout the current console generation, agreed. It's how some of my favorite games this decade, including Returnal, Astro's Playroom, and Demon's Souls, which I'm surprised to mention, you know, God of War, Horizon, or all the other various games, Ratchet & Clank, etc., surprisingly. But in the wake of the PS5's unfortunate price hike, my enthusiasm for the console's future has waned. Between overpriced upcoming peripherals like the PSVR 2, which I agree, my kind of quick take as I kind of dissect this article, I mean, it is more expensive than the literal console itself. Now, if you go and compare it, though, to other headsets and other VRs, it's actually a really good price point with really good piece of tech, and I think a big thing we'll note is that if we could actually use the PlayStation VR 2 on PC, that actually might even be a better value for other folks. Kind of how back in the day, how the PlayStation 2 and like 3 would have Blu-ray players and DVD players. This actually might be almost a more enthusiast for VR, like PC users, rather than the PlayStation 5 users themselves. Although we don't necessarily know because it's not out yet, so we haven't had a lot of hands-on and testing. That also might kind of bolster up the price because other VR headsets might be $1,000 plus. Now, if it's only for the PlayStation, especially at the start, yeah, I'd probably agree. I think it's a little bit too much. But if you guys got one and checked one out, let me know. I also want to say the DualSense Edge is severely undercooked services in PS Plus and PlayStation Stars, and then Sony continues to fumble the bag with every announcement. At least for me, and with the recent news that Sony's continuing to foray into NFTs, unable to fathom the slightest bit of excitement for PS5 now. Now, we have also mentioned too that we did see that NFT thing, we talked about that before, where they're kind of trying to do like almost like a crypto blockchain type, like, I guess, stampage of various things where you basically, like, if you have like a cutscene or a collectible or like a skin, you might be able to go have it portrayed into the blockchain and have it like saved or be tradable, potentially as an NFT, potentially just as a crypto, or just potentially just in the system so they know you have it. Now, that's just a patent, so we don't know it's there. So that's kind of maybe a weird critique because there's patents all the time that just never get used. So it's kind of, an intriguing thing nonetheless. But when it comes to all this type of stuff too, I do think like PlayStation Stars, a little bit lackluster. I don't think I've seen many folks on like Twitter or even on my YouTube videos being like, yes, I'm so excited to get my Pixel. Like, that is kind of a good point. I will give them credit. And same with the PSVR 2, it's a little expensive. But some of those things, though, in my mind are more niche. Like, let's say you really don't mind paying extra money for this future tech. I think the PSVR 2 might be good. I think there's nothing wrong with that. You're just trying your best to go make everything good, nice, and solid. And then as well, when you have the DualSense Edge 2, like, it's nice. Like, you have the Pro controller, it's gonna be a good feature, and these are extra. Like, you could still play on your PlayStation 5 without the $600 VR, without the $200 Pro controller. And like, I mean, the same thing Xbox has, a lot of those things too, where Xbox has, you know, the Pro controllers, the Elite controllers, or other various things. Like, they used to have that weird little block, I forgot what it was called, like the Kinect or whatever it was. Like, there's like, they just like extra bonus things, which is fine. So they're saying now that 2023 is looking bright, if you're in it for the games, with Final Fantasy 16 hyped, Spider-Man hyped, and Silent Hill 2 remake making headlines too as well, also hyped too, and at least they also pretty much know that they just want to make sure it's good. But for anyone, they're all saying these huge prices for the hardware and software are making it even a harder sell, and I do kind of agree, because over time, like, it's hard to justify a $70 game when all your competitors are $60. It's harder to justify $550 consoles when basically it was $499 a few months ago. Now, it's not out there in the US yet, but soon it might be. So they're also kind of calling out the other regions where it's hard to go and buy a console, which I'm kind of in that same boat. I just think out of my own principles of being stubborn, I probably wouldn't want to go and get that console either way. Like, if I had to pay the extra $50 and my buddies paid more or paid less and I had to pay more, I'm just gone with that. So that's also justifiable. But at the same time, they're also trying to say, like, you know, the PS5 Digital is an easier sell, which I agree. And I think you can live without the disc drive this day and age. A lot of folks will download the game, download it overnight, and when they come home from work the next day, they're ready to go and play it. Now, I'm a disc guy myself, I'm an OG, but I mean, especially younger folks, I don't think they mind too as well. And they keep on saying, though, that there's every chance they could lower the price point, can now be also phased out too as well, if they keep on doing these revisions and making them like a Slim or Pro, which I could also justify it is a little bit harder to go and be like, yeah, it's hard to make it cheaper when people are still buying it off the shelves and scalpers are still able to go and scalp it, which is, I think, a valid critique, but that's not really Sony's problem. That's just more of like the overall market. As I say, though, with any console, though, the investment doesn't stop there. First and third party AAA games on PS5 typically cost $70 or, you know, brand new. And now I do agree, I've always been kind of a big component against getting the $70 games, but at least every game they've mostly done at $70 has been good. Like Last of Us Remake, I don't know if it was really worth $70, but it was a good game. God of War, I think, so far has been worth $70. There's a lot of content, a lot of stuff. Same with Horizon. Ratchet & Clank was also good. Not 100% convinced if it's worth it or not, but it was good. And I don't know. Like, I think at least these are long RPGs with good graphics and good story and obviously quality tested. So that's one thing I might say, like, well, it might actually be worth it. But still, the high price, especially in this economy and inflation and everything, is a little harder to go and see. So granted, the high cost of games isn't exclusive to the PS5. Brand new games on Xbox Series X, and as typically match Sony in price. Sony, however, though, is in the charge in the grossly overpriced peripherals. Now, this is one I can also maybe kind of get behind too. Like, I'm seeing merit behind this. I just think the core PS5 console's fun. You get good games, you're good to go. But I do agree, like a Pro controller, my initial thoughts is it's a little niche, you know? It's like, you don't need it. Like, you don't need to go and spend that money. A normal controller is fine. And like, you're not getting that much of a competitive edge or anything that much more crazy when you go through it. So, I even go and say now, obviously the Edge isn't required to fully enjoy games on the PS5, but the point is that the pad looks like to have only marginally improvements over the base DualSense, but namely a couple of back pedal buttons and customizable profiles. But that's still nice. Like, it's still bonus stuff you don't need, and once again, it's more of an enthusiast, kind of like the PSVR. So the controller's adaptive triggers, haptic feedback don't seem to have any improvements, and there's still concerningly little info on the Edge's battery life. Given the DualSense retail price of $70, been a lot of extra for the Edge, but this is also, once again, kind of just niche and only if you want to go have it. They're pushing for the PSVR 2, which I think still is expensive as all heck, at around $550. Like, that is more than the literal PS5. Now, granted, once again, though, these are all niche, and if you only want them, if they're an enthusiast, and once again, it might be better for normal VR folks, but at the end of the day, it's still, like, it's fine. It's just bonus stuff only if you want it to as well, you know, on top of that. And on top of that, too, there also is folks with the PS Plus, and I do think this is probably the worst offering, too, when it comes to PlayStation. I think the PlayStation games are great. I think single player is great. Peripherals are bonus, but I really feel like PS Plus has almost never been worth it for me. Now, you do occasionally get old games, which is fine, but I really was a big component of wishing that the PS Plus would have been like maybe like, I don't know, maybe give like a 10-hour trial for a brand new game when it comes out, which some they do, or as well, it would have been really nice to maybe have like maybe 2 months in, you get a single player game, or something of the sort to make it worthwhile. Maybe like a bigger, like a $5 off every AAA game to make it also worth it. But this is probably the weakest system. And now I'm not going to say, like, we kind of already know PS5s are more for their single player games. Xbox is more for Game Pass. That's kind of what we're just kind of used to when it comes with all of this. So I do agree. I do think Sony's kind of pushing a lot on the pricing, and even things like the PlayStation Stars. You're not really getting too much out of it. It's just bonus. It's like you don't need it, but it can kind of go a lot farther. So I don't, kind of my thoughts on this is I still think the PS5 is worth buying. I think the single player games are phenomenal. They're maybe a little pricey, but at least they've been good so far. But if they keep on getting worse games, I'd probably get a little bit more, tilted in all honesty. And I think the part two of a lot of this stuff is I think Sony kind of knows its lane, and a lot of these things are more extra niche, and we can go from there. So I kind of want to hear your thoughts and comments on this one. I can kind of see the points on a lot of this argument kind of being like contrarian on it, but at the same time, with a lot of it being bonus and the console itself still being solid and good, and thank God, not increased in price yet, I think overall it's still probably worth buying a PS5. But that's just me. Give me your thoughts and comments down below. And as well, make sure you guys are subscribed with the notifications on as well for our $500 Xbox, PS5, or cash giveaway. The Twitter and Twitch room down below if you guys want to follow. And the Amazon links for the signups for a drop tomorrow, and Target links too. And I appreciate you guys all so much for watching in the first place.